Good Monday evening, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Lions Grid. Coming to you live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. Today, we're talking about a recap of the Week 14 matchup between the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions, and we're celebrating a Lions win. Thinking about the the pregame episode, I will admit I chose the Vikings to win. I thought it was a little much favoring the 5-7 team as they were hosting their 10-2 rivals. It was the first time in the Super Bowl era that 5-7 team had been favored over a 10-2 team. Yeah, I chose the Vikings, and I said pretty clearly for me, I think the Lions have an opportunity to win. They just needed to come out and show me. And boy, did they come out and show me a victory. I think they showed everyone that this isn't the same old Lions team. This is sort of a new leaf. Um, how much of a new leaf? That's going to be determined here as we go through the rest of the season. But certainly, the Lions teams of old would not have won this game. This is was a must-win game for the Lions. We've been talking here in the Lions Grid that hey, to have a legitimate chance of making the NFC playoffs, they need to win out, and they beat by all measures a 10-2 Minnesota Vikings team, who was one win away from clinching the NFC North and a better team on the season. They were 10-2 for a reason. They beat the Lions earlier this season at home in Minnesota. The Lions able to now split the series and get in the win at Ford Field. I think one of the things we've talked about the most here through all the seasons of the Lions Grid, and really it applies to more than just the Lions. But when you're looking at the NFL, the fact that you play 6 games against divisional opponents, you really need to handle business against those teams. So the fact that they were able to split the series with the Vikings, go 1-1, it's incredible. Um, and as Jeff says here inside of the YouTube chat, the fact that Goff hasn't thrown a pick in 5 games, and we look at the turnover difference. That's a big it was a big factor in this game because if you look at the box scores for both these teams, the Lions had 464 yards of total offense. The Vikings had 416. We were able to shut down the running game, held Dalvin Cook in that rushing attack as a team to 22 yards. But Justin Jefferson had a career day, set the the team record for receiving yards. Kirk Cousins also, was tearing it up there, throwing the football. A big difference in the game was turnovers. Lions had 0. There were 2 forced fumbles, 2 fumbles given up by the Vikings, and that turnover differential. When you look at the tale of the 2 seasons Lions have had, has been huge. They have a positive turnover ratio. They are taking the ball away from the other team and doing a good job of holding on to it when it's their turn. And that has really been, I think, the real key to their success because, as we've mentioned, obviously Kirby Joseph coming in, he's been playing well. Sam Houston, he's been playing well. You've seen Adrian Hutchinson, him step it up, but really you haven't added additional talent to a defense that's been struggling. The difference has come in the fact that they've been taking the ball away from the opposing team and that the Lions have been playing very smart football. They have not been giving the ball away. And a big part of that is Jared Goff, because it's not like he's just been managing games. He's been out there slinging the ball. I mean, in this last game, when what did he finish at? 27 of 39, 330 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, that's more than a game manager stat. And so the fact that he is able to be making plays while also keeping, taking care of the football has been a big difference for the Lions. And I think one of the things that we saw in this game that's going to be interesting to see if they can continue it. This was Jameson Williams' second game. He got his first reception as a Lion, and it was for a 40-yard touchdown. You also had DJ Chark, who had a long touchdown reception as well. And of course, you had Amon-Ra St. Brown and Josh Reynolds catching those intermediate routes. The fact that you now have a healthy DJ Chark and Jameson Williams to really take the top off of defenses, and then you have to watch out for Josh Reynolds, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DeAndre Swift out of the backfield, Justin Jackson, Penei Sewell on that tackle eligible play to get that first down. Um, there are a ton of weapons. And the fact that Jared Goff is making smart decisions with the football and finding those open receivers and not trying to do too much and really just taking what the defense has to offer. You're seeing the Lions right now. It's completely different than they were at the beginning of the season when they went 1-6. It's just truly remarkable. It's um, I will be the first to admit that I earlier this season was one of those people that was like, okay, well, we're really just playing for a draft pick in the draft coming up in 2023 in April. And they have not only turned it around, but are now definitely making that playoff push. And we'll take a look here at the current updated standings. Let's go ahead and take a look here and take a look see. So you can see still, uh, we actually have our first playoff berth secured. The Eagles have clinched a playoff spot finally at 12-1. So there are 6 playoff spots left in the NFC. And of course, right there on the bubble, moving up to number 9, we got your Detroit Lions at 6-7. The Seahawks losing to the Panthers. That's something that's going to be interesting because the Panthers are on the schedule for the Lions. And really, as we take a look at the upcoming schedule for the Lions, I think they should be favored in all of their games. But that path could, there's no guarantees, right? I think the hardest game they had left on their schedule was this game against Minnesota. I think next week's game against the Jets is going to be difficult. The fact that Mike White got hurt, I think, is going to make that a little more, a little easier. But that defense is still really good for the Jets. And so, it's great they were able to beat the Vikings. I think the thing that's going to really tell us how much this team has evolved and how different they are from Lions teams in the past is, can they complete the 6-game run they need to run the table and get to 10 wins? The fact they beat the Vikings, that's not something that past Lions teams would have done. This idea of finishing out the season on a 6-game winning streak, not something we've heard the Lions doing. So we are in uncharted waters when it comes to the Detroit Lions. And really, it's exciting as fans. We get to sit here and watch these games have meaning here in December. They are on the bubble, they are in the hunt, and really all 4 of these remaining games against the Jets, the Panthers, the Bears, and the Packers all have incredible meaning. And I think you got to like the Lions' chances. They have shown in their recent games that they can compete with pretty much everybody. The only game they've lost here recently was the Thanksgiving game against the Bills. It's it's going to be interesting. And I know Jeff comments there that we might be able to drop one of the games. I think realistically, thankfully, the Giants are kind of having a huge injury problem at the moment. They're kind of running out of bodies. So I think you're going to continue to see them drop. In Seattle, unfortunately for them as well, they had both of their starting running back, their starting running back Kenneth Walker out and his backup out as well. So they're kind of running out of bodies, whereas the Lions are a relatively healthy team. Could those injuries to other teams help make it so that the Lions could potentially drop one? Certainly it could, but I think really realistically, to make sure that you have the best possible, and it's not a huge hot spicy take, but realistically to have the best chance of making the playoffs, get to those 10 wins, win out, and I think you're in a great place. And that requires you to do something that you haven't done very much throughout my lifetime, and that's go to Lambeau and beat the Packers. The Packers are hot garbage, and I think the Lions should feel confident heading into that game. But the fact they have to go to Lambeau, play the Packers, a place where they have historically struggled, it's time to put all of this same old Lions stuff to bed and get that win because they are better than the Packers. Aaron Rodgers and that crew are just awful. Go there, put them out of their misery the last game of the season, and really take care of business here. If we take a look again at these last 4 remaining games in the season, again, we're traveling next week to take on the Jets, then traveling down to Carolina to take on the Panthers. Last home game of the season is against the Bears, and then traveling on Jan 8th to Lambeau to take on those Packers. If you can win these remaining 4 games, I mean, I think you're heading into the playoffs definitely as a wild card team, but with a lot of momentum. And I think, a lot of these teams, if we come back here and look at the playoffs, a lot of these teams should be scared about having to match up with the Lions, especially if the Lions can stay healthy. And Jeff Okuda, I think getting him back is going to be important. He was dealing with an illness, and so he wasn't 100% here. And as you saw with Justin Jefferson running wild through the Lions secondary, um, you know, it'd be really nice to have him back because he has been the sort of the shutdown quarter. It's kind of weird that there's been this sort of role switch because obviously they drafted him in the first round, and his first 2 years in the league were anything but great. He was hurt, and when he was on the field, his play wasn't that stellar. But then you had Amari Awarie from Penn State, and uh, the fourth round pick, was playing out of his mind. His rookie season seemed like he could almost be a Pro Bowler, and that sort of added insult to injury. That hey, we took this other DB in the fourth round and he's playing much better. And now fast forward to this year, Akuda is acting like the defensive comeback player of the year, and Awarie is getting benched and not playing in games as a healthy scratch because he's been that bad. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if they uh, did the Dragon Ball Z and they sort of transferred consciousnesses between each other, and they switched who they were, like Captain Ginyu and Goku, but it's not good. I don't know how Awari has sort of fallen off a cliff, and he did not look good. Again, he's been scratched a few times this season, but getting because of the Jeff Okuda's availability was sort of forced into action this Sunday, and didn't look good. Didn't look good. Um, Overall though, like was, taking a look at the stats for the game, there's really not a lot to complain about. The fact that they were able to win by double digits again against a 10-2 team, uh, fantastic, right? Fantastic. The 2 deep touchdown passes, the 2 forced fumbles. They were able to hold on to the ball for 31 minutes and 54 seconds, out time of possessing the ball longer than the Vikings. They were really good on third down as well, going 7 of 15, and 1 of 2 on fourth downs. They had the 4 sacks in the game. A lot of like to see what you're seeing so far out of the Lions. I will say the only thing that I would critique them on from that game is they did have 7 penalties for 51 yards. Uh, Out of the play that you saw on the field, I think that's the one thing you can knock the Lions on. You'd like to see them clean that up. But they were able to overcome that against a good team and still win. It didn't change the outcome of the game for them. And a big part of that, I think, is them, of course, forcing those 2 fumbles. The big one was the fumble they forced right before halftime as the Vikings were driving down the field. Getting them to turn that ball over and preventing them from scoring heading into the half, I think was a big deal. So, yeah, I mean, excited to see what happens with the Lions at this point. They are heading to the Meadowlands for the second time this season. They were there earlier this season to take on the Giants. They'll now be taking on the Jets. But should be a pretty spicy game. My MVP as of this week for the NFL. That's a tough one. That is a tough one. Um, you know, uh, it's hard because I think my comeback player of the year is definitely Geno Smith, but I think he has also been pretty fantastic for Seattle, stepping in for Russell Wilson as he has gone to Bronco country. Um, I think realistically, you're probably looking at, if you take a look at the top teams, is probably where you're going to see the MVP come from, which would mean you probably have like maybe Jalen Hurts. You could see maybe Josh Allen, maybe Patrick Mahomes again. I think really Joe Burrow has also been fantastic for the Bengals. Uh, realistically, um, you know, I think probably if I was to give it to someone, would probably be Hurts because I think there was, uh, I think there was a narrative out there in this offseason as you headed into the season that, especially with them adding AJ Brown, that if Jalen Hurts couldn't make it work with this Philadelphia team, that they should move on from him as a quarterback. And he has come in and played, really, he's played really good for them. Um, and so, uh, certainly, I think his play. But as overall as a team, though, I think the Eagles are a better team. Uh, whereas Jeff, as you pointed out, either going with Hurts or Mahomes. I think if you take Patrick Mahomes off of the Chiefs and insert a different quarterback, I think Mahomes is probably more essential to the success of the team. I don't know if you could swap in somebody else and the Chiefs be as good of a team as they are without him behind center. Whereas I think if you drop some other QBs in with the Eagles, with the way that defense plays, with the talent they do have on offense, um, I think other QBs could be successful. Maybe not at the exact same production level that we've seen from Jalen Hurts, but pretty close. So if I had to give one of those two the edge, probably Mahomes, but you know, it'll be interesting to see how everyone votes. And like I said, I think depending on how things shake out, the Bengals are currently on a 5-game winning streak. Joe Burrow has been a big part of that. I think he could potentially weasel his way in there, especially since he's got that head-to-head win against Mahomes and the Chiefs. Um, and he was finally able to beat the Browns, get that monkey off his shoulder. So we'll have to see. But yeah, I think probably someone who is underrated towards the MVP who should I'm not saying he should win the award, but I think he should be in the discussion uh is Jared Goff. Again, I don't think his numbers are going to be enough to win him the award, but the fact that he has gone these 5 games without interceptions, he has of late really been having games of multiple 100 yards, multiple TDs, north of 60% completions. Uh, I think he has certainly come in here and been instrumental to this turnaround for the Lions. There other players have definitely contributed, but he'd at least I'm not saying he'd win the award for me, not trying to be a Lions homer, but he would certainly at least get a honorable mention as as I was putting my list together because I do think he's been a big part of this turnaround that the Lions have had this season. So um, yeah, 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 yeah. Of course, you could always go Baker Mayfield after the way he came out there with less than 30 hours with the Rams and got that win over the Raiders, and then was headbutting everybody on the sidelines. Pretty magical stuff there from Baker. Is he probably I'm not sure if this will be the last season for Mr. Stafford if he'll be back next season or not, but you know I could see them keeping Baker and sort of rolling with him next year. So could be interesting times out there in LA. But yeah, super excited to see the end of this Lions season. Again, they're right there in the playoff hunt. Um, again, I think they should be favored in their games. The Jets game is going to be interesting because of their defense. The game against Carolina, which I think was going to be a game where probably felt pretty confident heading into or before they beat the Seattle Seahawks. They're you got to watch out for the Panthers. With Sam Darnold in there, they're doing a good job of taking care of the ball. Their running attack has been ridiculous. It seemed like no matter who they had in the backfield last week against the Seahawks, they were finding space and able to run the ball really well. And then their defense is certainly not something to overlook. They had multiple turnovers in that game the Seahawks did. So for the Lions, obviously a key really in any game is to take care of the football. But for the Lions, as they are playing these two good defenses in the Jets and the Panthers, it's really going to be important for them to continue this mistake-free football they've been playing, and let their defense force the opponent's offenses into making mistakes, and then make sure they're holding on to the ball, because that's been the recipe for success for them over these last 6 games. So if they can continue to do that against these two good defenses, and not give the Jets and the Panthers extra opportunities, and capitalize on it when they do have the ball, I think it should be pretty smooth sailing for the Lions. I think the Lions should have a pretty easy time beating the Bears as well. They handled them earlier this season. And then, of course, I definitely think they should be favored against the Packers. Again, it is at Lambeau, a place they've struggled, but um, I think they can overcome that this year, because the Packers are just, I don't see them mounting, much resistance. But, you know, there's a reason we play the games. And so we'll see if the Lions can close it out. I'd like to see them go 4-0 over these next 4 weeks. And if they do that, I think you really have to really watch out for them. They could definitely make a splash in the playoffs. And Tyreek Hill, that is a good non QB recommendation there, Jeffrey. He has been. I think it helps too that Tua hasn't been as impressive over the last few weeks. Because I think if Tua had stayed at the level of productivity that he had been seeing, I think people would probably, not that it isn't impressive what Tyreek Hill has been doing, but they'd almost be more likely to attribute that to Tua. But the fact that Tua has struggled and Tyreek Hill still has his numbers, I think that builds even more of an impressive case for why Tyreek should be considered, because he is just leading the way, leading the way. So that is a good call. There's a potential non QB MVP. All right, everybody. Just want to thank you for tuning in. This has been the Lions Grid, coming to you live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. If you do appreciate the show and want to help the channel grow, go ahead and search for us on any one of those platforms, and make sure you either like, follow, or subscribe, so that you can stay up to date with the latest episodes. And we really appreciate your support. We'll catch you on Sunday as we take a look at the matchup between the Jets and the Lions. Well, I think we'll have a good idea of who will be starting at QB for the Jets, because I'm not sure if it's going to be Mike White. He had to go to the hospital after getting destroyed by the Bills. So I'm not sure if his ribs are going to be healed enough for him to get the start there. So, not sure if it's going to be Flacco under center, or if they might trot out Zach Wilson from his time on the bench. Hard to say. Or maybe Mike White is. He's a pretty tough guy. He went back into that game 2 times, so who knows? They might try and start him against the Lions, but we'll hopefully have more insight to that on Sunday when we do the pregame episode. I'm Kevin Marhini. This has been the Lions Grid. We'll catch you on Sunday. See ya.